Hello book lovers, welcome to Uncommon Reader. My name is Daniela, and in today's video I bring you a Gentleman in Moscow reading blog. Enjoy. Our story begins in 1922. Count Alexander Rostov is deemed an unrepentant aristocrat by the Bolshevik tribunal and is sentenced to house arrest in the Metropole, a grand hotel across the street from the Kremlin. Rostov, an indomitable man of erudition and wit, has never worked a day in his life and must now live in an attic room while some of the most tumultuous decades in Russian history are unfolding outside the hotel's doors. Unexpectedly, his reduced circumstances provide him entry into a much larger world of emotional discovery. (1922) An Ambassador. At 6:30 on the 21st of June 1922, when Count Alexander Ilyich Rostov was escorted to the gates of the Kremlin and to the Red Square, it was glorious and cool. Drawing his shoulders back without breaking stride, the Count inhaled the air like one fresh from a swim. The sky was the very blue that the cupolas of St. Basil's had been painted for. Their pinks, greens, and golds shimmered as if it were the sole purpose of our religion to cheer its divinity. Even the Bolshevik girls conversing before the windows of the State Department store seemed dressed to celebrate the last days of spring. "Hello, my good man," the Count called for Fyodor at the edge of the square. "I see the blackberries have come in early this year." Giving the startled fruit seller no time to reply, the Count walked briskly on, his wax moustaches spread like the wings of a gull. Passing through Resurrection Gate, he turned his back on the lilacs at the Alexander Gardens and proceeded towards the theater square, where the Hotel Metropole stood in all its glory. When he reached the threshold, the Count gave a wink to Pavel, the afternoon doorman, and turned with a hand outstretched to the two soldiers trailing behind him. "Thank you, gentlemen, for delivering me safely. I shall no longer be in need of your assistance." And at page 39, Count Roscoe meets Nina for the first time, a young girl that will accompany him for a few chapters. As the Count waited for his wine, he gazed around the restaurant, but his fellow diners offered no relief. No one appeared particularly gay, and no one paid the Count any mind, that is, except for the young girl with the penchant for yellow who appeared to be spying on him from her table behind the fountain. According to Vasily, this 9-year-old with a straight blonde hair was the daughter of a widowed Ukrainian bureaucrat. As usual, she was sitting with her governess. When she realized the Count was looking her way, she disappeared behind the menu. Turning his attention to his okroshka, the Count could tell at a glance that it was a commendable execution, a bowl of soup that any Russian in the room might have been served by his grandmother. Closing his eyes in order to give the first spoonful its due consideration, the Count noted a suitably chilled temperature, a tad too much salt, a tad too little kvass, but a perfect expression of dill, that harbinger of summer which brings to mind the songs of crickets and the setting of one's soul's at ease. But when the Count opened his eyes, he nearly dropped his spoon.
for standing at the edge of his table was the young girl with the penchant for yellow, studying him with that unapologetic interest peculiar to children and dogs. Adding to the shock of her sudden appearance was the fact that her dress today was in the shade of a lemon. "Where did they go?" she asked, without a word of introduction. "I beg your pardon, where did who go?" She tilted her head to take a closer look at his face. "Why, your mustaches." The Count had not much cause to interact with children, but he had been raised well enough to know that a child should not idly approach a stranger, should not interrupt him in the middle of a meal, and certainly should not ask him questions about his personal appearance. Was the minding of one's own business no longer a subject taught in schools? "Like swallows," the Count answered, "they traveled elsewhere for the summer." Then he fluttered a hand from the table into the air in order to both mimic the flight of the swallows and suggest how a child might follow suit. She nodded to express her satisfaction with his response. "I, too, will be traveling elsewhere for part of the summer." The Count inclined his head to indicate his congratulations. "To the Black Sea," she added. Then she pulled back the empty chair and sat. "Would you like to join me?" he asked. By way of response, she wiggled back and forth to make herself comfortable, then rested her elbows on the table. Around her neck hung a small pendant on a golden chain, some lucky charm or locket. The Count looked towards the young lady's governess with the hopes of catching her attention, but she had obviously learned from experience to keep her nose in her book. The girl gave another canine tilt to her head. "Is it true you are a count?" "This true." Her eyes widened. "Have you ever known a princess?" "I have known many princesses." Her eyes widened further, then narrowed. "Was it terribly hard to be a princess?" "Terribly." So, time for a wrap up. I'm halfway through the book almost, and I just wanted to share a few impressions. I just am in love with the Amor Towles style. The writing is so sophisticated and filled with punchlines and such details and metaphors, incredibly rich. And also, I've been reading quite slowly because I feel like you really have to savor every word and how these words are put together in such a symphony. What is fascinating for me as a reader, being kind of sometimes distracted and restless when there are way too many characters in the book, especially when they're only extras, they come and go and you never hear about them again. I found that thanks to the entertaining language of the author, it gives you such a great experience of reading. Besides Nina, the young girl that lives in the metropole, and for a while then she will go to college, so she won't be much of a presence in the book. There's another woman that the Count bumps into, an actress that comes to the hotel, and she comes with a couple of dogs that are kind of distracted by a cat. And there's such a lovely encounter that I wanted to read you, just to give you another sample of what a fun read A Gentleman in Moscow is. So these dogs are trying to chase the cat, but the Hotel Metropole was not a hunting ground. It was a residence par excellence, an oasis for the worn and weary. So, with a slight curl of the tongue, the Count gave an upward sloping whistle in G major. At the sound, the dogs broke pursuit and began restlessly circling at the foot of the stairs. The Count gave 2 more whistles in quick succession, and the dogs, resigning themselves to the fact that the day was lost,
trotted to the Count and heeled at his feet. "Well, my boys," he said, giving them a good scratching behind the ears, "where do we hail from?" "Arf!" replied the dogs. "Ah!" said the Count, "how lovely!" After smoothing her skirt and straightening her hat, the willowy one, the woman, gracefully crossed the lobby to the Count, where, thanks to a pair of French heels, she met him eye to eye. At such proximity, the Count could see that she was even more beautiful than he suspected, and haughtier too. His natural sympathies remained with the dogs. "Thank you," she said, with a smile that presumed to launch armadas. "I'm afraid they are quite ill-bred." "On the contrary," replied the Count, "they appear to be perfectly bred." The willow made a second effort at a smile. "What I meant to say is that they are ill-behaved." "Yes, perhaps ill-behaved, but that's a matter of handling, not breeding." As the willow studied the Count, he noted that the arches over her eyebrows were much like the marcato notation in music, that accent which instructs one to play a phrase a little more loudly. This, no doubt, accounted for the willow's presence for issuing commands and the resulting huskiness of her voice. But as the Count was coming to this conclusion, the willow was apparently coming to a conclusion of her own, for she now dispensed with any intent to charm. "Handling does seem to have a way of eclipsing breeding," she said acerbically. "And for that reason, I should think that even some of the best bred dogs belong on the shortest leashes." "An understandable conclusion," replied the Count, "but I should think that best bred dogs belong in the surest hands." Such wit. I love it. So I'm going really slow because I feel like I really have to savor these pages, this language, very, very slowly. It's like when you eat something that you really, really love, you don't want it to end. And so you take your time tasting all the flavors. I'm on my morning walk. It definitely rained a lot. The beach is all flooded. And here's my library. Stunning view from their windows, don't you think? Let's walk some more. And here we are. It's a wrap. I finished it. I'm quite sad that I finished this book. But actually, the second half of the book, I read it quite fast because it happened that I was kind of sick, a little feverish at the end of September. So I had plenty of time to relax and finish up the book. Because also the second half of the book, it's full of action. There are a lot of things going on that brings us to quite a surprising end to this book. Of course, I'm not going to reveal much, but one consideration I have that I think, and I would really be curious to know if whoever read this book feels the same way. I feel like Charles Dickens entered Amor Towles' body and helped him write this book, because I found so many analogies to Dickens' style. The wit, the adventures, and the sophistication of the language. Everything really reminded me of the Charles Dickens style because of such details, and they're put in the right place and they enrich the story instead of making it a little tedious. And I have an issue with the longer description, I have to say, but when they are witty and sophisticated and somehow incredibly poetic, that you just want to keep it coming. There are other characters that Count Roscoe will encounter in the second part of the book. We discuss Nina, of course, in the first of their encounters and the beginning of this very special friendship with this young lady. And the book actually goes through some phases and we skip some years in the life of Count Roscoe at the Metropole Hotel. So certain things happens while we skip from one decade to the other, and this book finishes around 1954. So as we said in the beginning, we see a lot of political changes as well in Russia, and the Count is an observer from his confinement, but he has friends who visits him, and also new friendships that forms that will keep him in the loop of what's going on in Russia. And a significant figure, Nina, is also because when she becomes an adult, she decides to defect the Bolsheviks and is sent away to Siberia. And she is leaving her daughter, she had a daughter very young, with the Count. And little Sophia, she's only 5 years old when her mother takes off, and she becomes the adopted daughter of the Count. He gets really affectionate with her and feels so responsible after the bond he had formed with Nina, although he hasn't seen her for many years when she took off to study. Sophia's character is a little more mellow, very obedient, very smart, whereas Nina was, yes, smart indeed, but also very curious and adventurous, and that's why she couldn't wait to get out and explore the world and be part of something important. Sophia instead is very, very fond of Count Roscoe, and she doesn't want to leave him. So they form a very, very deep bond. And then there's Anna. I've already shared the encounter, the witty encounter the Count had with her. And they also form a very strong relationship at the beginning, a little superficial, but with the years go by, they keep seeing each other. And also Anna goes through important transformation. She also goes through some phases of high successes, and then her career takes a turn from the worst due to aging, but then she's able to find herself and rediscover herself in different type of roles. And that gives her the opportunity also to be in Moscow more often. She plays in the theater. So the relationship with the Count becomes deeper and deeper. We'll also witness the relationship of the Count with Mishka, who was the only person who knew Count Roscoe before he was confined to the Metropole Hotel. Mishka shares a love for literature and poetry with the Count, and also is aligned with the beliefs of the Bolsheviks, although when they start to ban poetry as certain literature, he rebels, so he doesn't really want to be part of the party anymore. And when he goes to see the Count, their conversation is so rich because they bring back memories of their time when they were younger, and they also speak about literature as well, the current politics of those times when they meet. And it's also very enriching for the reader, as we have a very insightful look of the politics of those days, and also the culture and the social life as well. Life at the Metropole for the Count is really never dull. He forms very deep friendships with the chef, Emile, and the maître d', Andrei. And he also becomes first a waiter and also later on the head of the waiters, because he has such experience on the socialite rules. You know, he was such a connoisseur of wines, so he would know which wine goes really well with all the amazing food that Emile would cook. And so he decided to take a role and had a job in the most elegant restaurant of the hotel. But there's also an antagonist, which the writer nicknames as Bishop, who starts as a waiter, and the Count, we can immediately understand he's not liking this person because he's not a connoisseur of wine. So it's definitely a no for the Count, who was actually such an expert on the matter. He's really annoyed that this person has been given a job in such a high-end restaurant. But this Bishop has very important friends in the party, so he makes his way up to become the manager of the hotel, which will create some sort of problems later on in the Count's life. But the Count also, you know, with his savoir-faire and his ways to talk himself out of difficult situations, he's going to be able to, you know, skim through difficult times and situations that will happen during the decades of his stay at the hotel. So beautiful cast, superbly portrayed by the author, and a character to fall in love with, Count Roscoe. I'm wondering how many of you were able to see the TV series, and I hope it's going to be distributed through other channels, because I would die to watch Ewan McGregor portray Count Roscoe. I wasn't picturing any actor while I was reading. Sometimes I can picture an actor that I find suitable for this role, but I just couldn't find the right actor to envision Count Roscoe with. So I think it created such an aura of mystery in my imagination, but I would be curious to watch the TV series, and I'm sure it will lack so many details though, because you know that the language is so exquisite. It will just make you giggle, because so many moments are so filled with wit, and wit is, I think, one of the most entertaining
aspects of a book that to me really gives me a thrill. Because, you know, it's maybe easy to say something funny, but to say something funny and sophisticated, you know, we are in a different level. So let me know what you thought if you read this book or if you watched the series. I am in love with this character. I've just mentioned in my last video, that was a book tag. There was a question related to one of your favorite characters in a book, and definitely Count Roscoe will stay in my heart for a long time. And I hope you enjoyed this reading vlog. I look forward to see you here on Uncommon Readers soon. Thank you for watching. I'll wait for you in the comments if you have any. Say hi. See you soon and happy reading. Ciao.